Welcome to another episode in the KIPS Podcast. My name is Tyler Valencia. I'm the president of KIPS and Time to Train Fitness. I have another topic, another guest in the same realm as the first two ones that we started off 2023 with, talking about at-home fitness, at-home workouts, online workouts. And really it's because I think they're important. I think it's a great avenue for fitness instructors, not just personal trainers, group instructors, health coaches, strength coaches, anybody in that capacity should be looking at home virtual training. And so I have Matt Berenc on the podcast. Him and I met a few years back when he was with a different company. Matt, thank you for coming on the KIPS Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back on and have a new conversation.
Yeah, of course. I think that's what's great is that a few years pass and I've been seeing what you do on Instagram and it's something new and it's in that area again that I enjoy. And I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about why I enjoy at-home workouts. I enjoy at-home training. I've been one of those people that were doing it before 2020. Always kind of had a garage gym myself. And I always looked at it as a way for convenience. It's a convenience factor that you save time. You don't have to jump in the car and you don't have to deal with having to wait for equipment, all that kind of good stuff in my book. And so when everybody else started looking at it, like, oh, hey, like I can work out at home. It is convenient. It is effective. Like, yeah, it is. You just got to get in some equipment invested in. So now taking that to fitness instructors, looking at ways that they can look at it as a real career. I think that is a good area for us to talk about. But before we get there, Matt, can you talk about for the listeners, your background, companies you used to work for, just to give a base for this episode?
Yeah. So I'll try not to go too far back. I've been in the industry for a long time. So I'll give at the front end, I'll give a very brief. But I started in the industry working the front desk at a 24-hour fitness in O'Fallon, Missouri. So I'm originally from St. Louis. But I worked the front desk there. I knew this was going to be my career, fitness industry. I did that so I could get a free gym membership, to be honest. But went from there and I got my degree in nutritional sciences, emphasis exercise physiology, dove headfirst into as much education as I can. But, professionally went from working at sports performance facilities in St. Louis to moving out to Los Angeles and spent a bulk of my career working for Equinox. Starting off as a trainer at the Santa Monica Club and essentially working my way up through the company. I went from being a trainer to opening up one of the newest clubs in the LA market, and also the first club to have at that time what was referred to as Tier 4. It's now referred to as Tier X, and it was the premier kind of coaching program within the company. And managed that club, managed that department for a while, and through that experience led into education and delivering education for the LA region, for the company nationally. And everything just kind of trickles into the next thing where my predecessor as the head of EFTI, the Equinox Fitness Training Institute, Geraldine, when she left the company, I was able to take on that role as director of EFTI and really had the honor of, and it's how I saw it, really kind of, being able to help guide the education for all the trainers in the company, but took over as director of EFTI. And from there, did that for a number of years and then left Equinox and now went to the company I'm at currently, FORME. So FORME, and it's FORME. So that way it's easily distinguishable. But in my role now, I'm the head of live coach development and technology for the personal training team. So basically I get the fun of still diving into education, helping trainers pivot into this virtual world and providing online fitness and online training and providing education around that to help upskill in that capacity, but then also helping to develop the technology that goes to support that. So I'm no developer or engineer by any stretch of the imagination, but I get to be like the subject matter expert to basically call out what does a trainer need or what might a client want in the session or things of that nature. So that way it's the best experience all around.
Mm-hmm. I want to touch on the quality aspect because, and from a technical aspect, then that's more of because I enjoy that kind of stuff. And with a lot of instructors, maybe first getting into it, they're more looking at Zoom workouts. And in my opinion, nothing at Zoom. We're recording this on Zoom and it has its functions. It has its, what you can do with it, but the quality can sometimes diminish with what you guys do now. And upscaling and bringing it to a higher level. What are those aspects? Is there some of the requirements, cameras, microphones? Are those some of the things that you guys require?
Yes, and actually, from our end as the company, we provide anything technically needed. We provide that to our trainers.
Wow,
so,
okay, nice.
Basically, we want to make sure if we're asking you to do something, we're giving you the tools to do it with.
Nice.
But in that respect, so like you called out, especially at the beginning of 2020, when pandemic hits, everybody kind of really jumped into using Zoom or FaceTime. Yeah. Basically, telecommunication was hacked to provide virtual training. Yep. Which it served its purpose, but the downside, it wasn't designed for that purpose. And so it left things to be desired. So part of what we also have done is develop our trainer app and the member app to be able to deliver that online training session and that online experience in the mindset of it being a training experience designed for training. So that goes to, for the app, all the things that the trainer can use during the session and what they're able to see, what the client's able to see. But then, as you called out from the technology and equipment standpoint, we use iPad Pros. We have a tripod that we send to the trainers. We send them AirPods, keyboards, everything, even ring lights, so that way their lighting's set up. Mm-hmm. Everything we can do to give them the best experience possible as a trainer and to present the best experience possible for the client.
Yeah, I love that you kept mentioning experience. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things for at home that anybody can improve upon is just the experience. What is it that client on the other end, what is it that they're going through? I think from a basic perspective, just thinking about any client in general, that exercise might not be at the top of their list, but if you can make it more enjoyable, if you can make an experience that they're going to want to remember, talk about, and that they know that whatever money they're paying for it, it's quality, I think you are hitting the ground running right there. So I love that you talked about the experience, but also setting up the instructors for success with it. All the things that you mentioned right there, I'm just like checking things off in my book. Like, wow, that's impressive. I am someone that thoroughly believes that as a company, you have to give your instructors the tools to be successful. Those are things right there. If they are looking at it for themselves, like, I don't even know where to start. Do I have to invest in all this? And you guys are just here's what you got to do. And you have something laid out, you're setting them up for success.
Yeah, what we've said internally and how we kind of framed it for ourselves to put us in the right mindset is we view the trainer as the first client. Like before, the client themselves joins the experience. It starts with the trainer, from everything from prior to the session, how they prep and how they write the programmings and the tools that we use and how we facilitate that, to then what they can do during the session and putting ourselves in the mindset of what best sets them up for success.
Yeah.
Start because it's kind of the trickle down element of if the trainer feels confident, they feel like they're set up for success, they have the support they need, then they're able to go into that session, being able to drive that experience and being comfortable and confident. We've all been experienced. I've been in the industry for over 20 years, but I can still remember some of my first sessions where you feel a little uncertain, you feel a little shaky. Yeah. The more confidence you can instill in that, it comes through. It's often spoken about like the nonverbal communication that you deliver. Well, if you're uncertain, that nonverbal impression is going to come through in the session, in person, live, or virtual. And you're going to need to be able to kind of overcome that. And so the more we can do to help, shortcut that uncertainty, the better.
Yeah, agree. Can you touch on some of those tools inside the app? That was something that I'm just jogging my memory on some of the things you mentioned already. What are some of those tools that the trainer has to access during the session?
Yeah. So during the session, trainers can see the client's heart rate live and in the moment. So they're able to, the client's able to pair their heart rate with either just to backtrack, our company has two ways to connect to the training session on the member side. The trainer is all through the same platform. But on the member side, they're able to connect in two ways, either through our hardware. So we have what we refer to as our Studio and Studio Lift. And that's basically the in-home device that a client can purchase and create the connection. And then there's also our member app. So if they don't want to purchase the hardware, they just want to connect to the trainer, they can do it to the member app. In both capacities, the trainer is able to see in that moment what the client's heart rate is. So if they have a heart monitor paired, and it's small things like this. It's, taking that idea of what can we do to avoid having to ask the question? Like if you're in person and, clients wear heart rate monitors all the time, you would say, hey, can you tell me what your heart rate is, or show me your watch, or what have you? An action taken. In this instance, because the heart rate's already connected, I, as the trainer, without even asking, can see it right up in front of me, and I'll know how you're responding to the exercise in hand. So it's a good way to indicate intensity and having that understanding. Additionally, we're able to actually have the program on the screen for the trainer to see and reference as they're going through and guide the progression of the session. But that also translates to the client side as well. As the client's going through, they're seeing the exercise name up on the screen on their end. They're able to see number of reps or time, the load that they're supposed to be using. And all that information is shared on both sides of the equation. And then for the trainer, they have some control over that experience. So they can switch between, and this is one of the things that it's kind of cool. We get to the development of the technology around it. It's what we've created to be observation and demonstration mode. Basically the trainer can go from being full screen. The client sees them, whether it be on an iPad or on our at-home device, as big as possible, or the trainer can swap themselves to be the small kind of window in the top left corner. And if they have the hardware, it's a mirrored surface, so the client can see the reflection. So now they can use that visual feedback. But then if they're on the mobile device, the client can use, now the client's camera essentially turns into their reflection. So the client becomes big on the screen, and they can, again, use that for visual feedback. So the trainer has control over swapping between those two. So if I'm coaching you, I can make myself big and say, hey, watch this. Here's what I'm doing. And then I take myself out of the way so you can see yourself and have that visual feedback and be able to see how you're doing. And then they're able to mute themselves, turn the camera on and off. And even we have what's called camera tracking. So that way, it was a direct combat against like can you see me now? Or like, is the camera in the right place? With our hardware, the camera actually tracks the client. So there's no way that, like, we have a full, essentially 180 degree view of their room. So there's nowhere the client can move that the trainer's not seeing them. So I call all of that out, especially that last piece, to say that we've set it up to where we have elegant technology that removes technology as the filter and just makes it feel like you're in the room with them still. You're just able to coach, you're able to focus on the thing you're there to do.
A quick little promo break here in this episode. If you're a fan of the KIPS podcast, you know that at some point there's a promotion for the Naboso Duo insoles. I just pulled these out of my shoes, gave them a quick rinse to get the sock dust off of them, and I wanted to talk about them because they're great. They're fantastic. They make an impact on your daily life. If you sit at a desk or if you're on your feet, sometimes your feet just feel achy, or maybe they feel like they went to sleep. That's for myself. I felt like after working a full day that my feet did not want to go to the gym, work out, do something active, and it led to some bad habits. But with these, I feel more active. I feel like I can do more things, and I've been using them for over a year now. With your clients, with your family, with your friends, share them, talk about them, see what they think, because they really do make a difference. If your feet feel more active, you're going to be more active, and that equates to being more healthy. Check them out. There's a link in the description. See all the products they have, and let's get back to this episode.
Nice. And I got to throw a small joke in here that in no way did I plan for us to give a breakdown of this company. Like I'm very fascinated by it. And I mean, the preliminary title of this podcast was Success with At-Home Training. And I mean, you're hitting so many things that someone myself that I have been doing online for a while, online education. And then I did move into the online workout space. And the way that I look at managing instructors, working within the fitness industry, there's so many boxes that you're checking right now that I'm just really blown away. And I mean, we're 14 minutes into this podcast and we've talked a lot about this app, and I think it sounds fantastic. I mean, I had never heard of the company prior to us talking, and it's great. Everything sounds very set up for the benefits of at home. I think that one of the things that when I think about at home a lot is there are so many people, in my opinion, that are at home that don't exercise, don't work out, that don't even have going to a gym on their agenda. It's not part of their life. But if there's a way to reach them, make exercise more accessible for them, it's a win. And this sounds like it to me.
That's exactly it. And, I'm in that category as well, on the client side of the equation, as well as the training side of the equation, where I want to create more access and have more access to doing what I need to do. And you started off at the beginning calling out your experience. I'm in the same boat. Like, even in the years I spent time managing the clubs for Equinox, or was in the head of education for Equinox, I more often than not worked out at home. And then I have 3 small kids. I got a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. There's no way I'm getting anywhere else except for my garage to live. And often that happens at night when they're asleep or when they're at school. So the more I have access to the quality instruction in my home, remove the barrier to entry of travel and getting somewhere, it just makes it easier for me to do what I want to do. And exactly to your note, like I'm excited to talk about what we do at FORME, because it's the world I've been living in for the last 2 years. I enjoy it. I think we're doing something great, but it also has, you can take everything I'm calling out and apply it, whether you use our app or not. Like, you can apply it to working with anybody online. And it's a big element of how you just approach your prep for that session, and how you approach, kind of how you want to create, and you highlighted the word, how you want to create that experience. Because the online training piece of it, that's one of the biggest elements that really you have to kind of amp up a bit more, is the experience. Like, the programming is the same. You're still looking at, okay, what's the environment? What do they have access to? What can they do? You take all those things, whether you're in brick and mortar or online, the same. So you can write the program that matches their needs, their goals, everything that you've taken in on them. The piece that you had to own is now, how do you drive that experience, and what additional elements do you need to consider? And part of it is what I've called out here, like what we set up the trainers with on their end, to have a tripod so they can just set up their stuff to where they're not trying to balance a phone or a camera or whatever. And it makes it easier on them. Mm-hmm. Tripods are $30. It can be a small investment to make your life, in the life of your clients as well. Like, even on their end, like, if you're, I'm kind of going on a lot of different directions, but I've had clients where they're trying to position their laptop camera in the right position, or like angle their iPad just so I can see them. They're constantly moving around. For a simple investment as the trainer of sending them a tripod, $30, it makes their experience 1,000 times better, because now it's much easier to just pick up a tripod and like twist it one way or another. And, if you need to adjust where you're looking, than like trying to find a new place to balance your device. So it plays into it. Again, I'm excited about what we're doing at FORME, because I think it's pretty cool. But there's a lot that can be had outside of that as well.
Oh yeah. And again, another small joke is that just off to my side, I have a whole corner full of tripods in my office. That's how important I think tripods are. I got a whole corner full of them. But with new trainers, let's say that somebody listening is still relatively new to online. Mm-hmm. Maybe they tried it over the last 2 years, or even they looked at it and they said, okay, this is not for me. I'm just going to wait it. I think there's still a lot in that boat, but hearing this podcast episode, they might think, hey, okay, this might be something I want to look into. With the educational process, with that role that you have, what is it that you're trying to do to get them ready to be comfortable, but also be familiar with some of these pieces that might be foreign to them, the technical aspects, but maybe the assessment part of the workout programming? How are you getting them ready for that?
Yeah. So a big piece. So once we clear out the technical side, that's obviously specific to us. A big piece of what we focus on really is, and it's why I've repeatedly used the word experience, but how they are setting up that training session and that experience. I've used the offhand kind of metaphor of putting themselves in the director's mindset. So like a film director or stage director. And the reason I use that as the kind of the perspective is that, and I'm making up what a director does. I've never been in the so this is what I assume a director does. So if there's any directors watching this and I'm wrong, sorry. But, as a director, you're organizing, okay, what's the stage setup? What's the environment that we're going to show? And you got to know that as the trainer, you got to know that on your end as well as the client's end. So start with what you can control. That's yourself, your environment. Okay. So that means know what your camera sees. Like and it seems obvious, but like pay attention to, is there a couch in the background? Is there a clean space in the background? Do you have your laundry sitting out in the background? Like those basic things where you want to present a professional visual on your end. Mm-hmm. And then taking it a step further, start thinking through and start planning for yourself. How do you navigate and utilize your space to provide the best insight? And so a big piece of that is, based on your camera position, there's going to be a spot in your room where you can be that somebody can see you clearly standing head to toe. Somebody can see you clearly if you're kneeling. Somebody can see you clearly if you're laying down, because you're going to have to demo. You're going to have to move around. It's still a training session. And you need to consider those things before you're in the moment. If you're in the session, you're like, oh, wait, can you see me? And like, let me see, make sure. Then you've reintroduced the filter of technology. Now you're calling attention to like, yes, we're on a camera and we're here. Versus if you go into the session and prep, and part of what I call out is like programming now expands beyond exercises, sets, reps, time, and all that to position. Where do you want to position yourself? So if you're showing a squat, do you know where you need to be? Do you know what angle you want to show? Like, are you showing head on? Are you showing profile 45? Like, these are all the different things you can start to consider and start mapping out for yourself. I call it out up front to say, be overt and like really on it with doing that in the first couple of sessions, first little bit of time that you're doing online. And then eventually you'll get to notice like, oh yeah, if I stand at this spot on my floor where I have this, this pattern on my rug or this mark on the floor, that's where I know I need to be for kneeling, or that's where I know I need to be for standing. And you start making it second nature, but you have to be intentional about it. I think that's the word, a better word to use. You have to be intentional about it up front. And then the other piece in terms of what we talk about is directing the client. The client's your main actor. They're the hero of the story. So that's how you have to go into them and say, hey, when you set up for the exercise, I want you here, or I want you to turn this way, or I want to see you from this angle. And it may change from set to set. So if I have you do a goblet squat, I may want to see you head on set one. And then like, hey, can you turn 45 degrees? I just want to see as you do it. And your communication around that has to be comfortable, straightforward. And the end result of that is they feel taken care of. They feel guided. It's not like a last minute thought. Is, hey, I know what I'm doing. I want to see these different things. And again, the client starts to become comfortable with where they should position themselves and which one. And you also, I'll take a pause from talking here in a second, but you also have a visual into their house and their home. And if somebody's working with you virtually, it's probably pretty likely they're going to be in the same place in their house on a consistent basis. The camera may not be in the exact same spot. In our instance, like if they have our hardware, it might be, but the camera may not be in the exact same spot, but it's going to be pretty close, I'm sure. And so you're going to know, okay, is they in their space, in the client space, do they have a full gym set up? Do they have a couch in the background? Is there a wall in the background? And the reason that becomes important is because you can now start using their environment as coaching cues and coaching markers to help guide it. So if there's a chair in the background and they're a new client, they're learning how to squat, and I'm just going to keep coming back to that example. Hey, go to the chair, sit, tap your backside to the chair, stand back up. Now come over here. Let's repeat that without the chair being. You can start using their environment to guide their actions. And that's the part of it. So like going like back to the overarching question, somebody getting into it, just getting to doing virtual training. These are the things to start consider, because that is what truly drives the right experience on the member side, where they still feel like you're there with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I liked all the terms. I like all that kind of stuff and how you get the visual too, for anybody that's listening on the audio version. I have to throw in that plug in there for, if you want to, make sure that you head over to the link in the description for the YouTube link to watch the video version of this podcast. But I like how you made that, you broke it down in terms of how someone listening can think of it for themselves, but also the client on the other side, that if that client feels more comfortable in that space too. That's part of the experience as well. They're using things around their house. They're being able to use things that they can visually see, touch, all that kind of stuff. And the thought that came into my mind was how, with what I do with my company, Time to Train Fitness, is that so everything's pre-recorded. And so there is a little bit of leeway with things that I can edit things out. I can cover things up. But with one-on-one, when you are coaching online, you're on now.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the production. The camera is rolling. You're going. What is that? I'm trying to think of the correct term here. What is I don't want to say the turnaround, but like how many sessions do you feel like it takes for somebody new to kind of feel comfortable and kind of find their way with teaching online?
Generally speaking, after I say we framed it in the time frame of like weeks versus sessions. After you're about first month of going through it, and that's not the time frame can be shorter or longer depending on how many sessions you're doing during that month. Mm-hmm. But after that first month, you should start getting into your groove of, particularly on your end. Again, new clients it's always going to be the reintroduction of somebody new and learning their space and learning how they move and what they understand. But for yourself, after that first month and doing a number of sessions, you'll be able to know your environment and where you need to be, where you place things, and what you need to do to help make that repeatable. So, for you as the trainer, it's also identifying like what are the tricks you can employ to make it easier for yourself. So like for some of the trainers, when we work with them, part of what we talk about is we go over with them is their setup of their training space. Some of them have a full garage gym and a full dedicated space to training. Great. Others are doing it in their living room and kind of carving out a space. And especially for that latter group that's carving out a space, figure out ways that you can make it easily repeatable for yourself. So, getting clear like dot stickers that you can put on the floor. So doesn't look like you got a bunch of stuff on your floor in the middle of your living room, but find a way like a real non-invasive marker that you can just at least identify where do you put your camera each and every time to give a consistent visual. And that way, if you know that, then that's the first domino in knowing how to navigate your space and what's being seen and where you need to be. Yep. And so it's small things like that can help tee you up and be ready to build that comfort even a little bit faster.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I agree. What I talk about online workout spaces or even where you're filming, part of it with loading your frame using, technology terms of like the camera and the framing, all that kind of stuff is, I say that what people see is they just see what's in this little square here. They don't see what's behind it. So use that to your advantage. Put notes, whiteboards, whatever you need, put dots on the ground. Like you said, people don't see is what's outside there, but what you have in camera, that's what they see. So if that's something behind that you can use for your cueing, which that, okay, you keep your rhythm going, but you just need that one little cue, use it. All these types of things used to your advantage. And again, you can have them out of frame and use that to get that rhythm down, that flow down, all that kind of stuff that I think really is a benefit of online training. Now with, online, and let's talk about a difference with gyms. And I'm going to bring an example here that I saw recently, which I thought it's again, another joke. I bring some jokes to the podcast sometimes. And I saw somebody that I know that works in the gym space or adjacent to the gym space. And he was talking about how, I should have said that it was a person that they said that how gyms are important for community. And I jokingly thought in my head how who talks to people when they go to the gym? I don't talk to anybody. And when I did go to the gym, I'm in my own space, but that's just a joke. But with online, community can be important. I'd look at it from my own business, Time to Train Fitness, group instruction. We still try to build some community. It takes time, but with a one-on-one space, is that something that you guys talk about, try to build with the instructors and the audience?
100%. So no matter what community, regardless of what space within the industry you're in, it is important. Yeah, and it kind of, I take it a step back to, again, like why is it important and thinking about the client and their mindset. And a big piece of it is you want to know that you're part of a group that has a shared struggle. Like you're not the only one working towards this and you're on an island by yourself. It's much better. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I've watched every Harry Potter, and it's the reference that came into my mind. So I apologize, but
my wife would like this. Keep going.
Yeah, I watch Harry Potter quite a bit. Seen all the movies a number of different times, and it's I think that the fifth one or what have you. But like Harry's talking to Luna Lovegood. I swear I'm unveiling myself as being
all
Harry
good here.
Harry's talking to Luna, and basically he's like, Harry's feeling isolated, and Luna's like, well, that's how they want you to feel, because then you're easier to, take control of or defeat. The same thing with community and what you want. Like, you want others to be on your team, whether implicitly or explicitly. Like, even to your example, like going to the gym, you don't really talk to anybody. I'm the same. I like being in my own space, working out on my own. It's the sheer nature of having others around you and seeing others in that shared struggle, so to speak. So I tee that up to say, like, just because we're virtual doesn't mean you can't do that in the same capacity. It just means you as the trainer can be the quarterback of that community. Mm-hmm. So if you have a bunch of clients that you train online, if they're open to it, and so you always want to ask for permission, so you're not connecting people that don't want to be connected, but make a community group out of your clients, like connect them with each other. They have the shared struggle of working towards a fitness goal and the shared connection of working with you. And so you can just be the moderator of that group and build some community and engagement amongst people that may live on different sides of the country and never interact in person, but it's a way for them to connect. Also look at what the communities also can happen outside of your world. So look at what your client's community is in their world. So, they have family, they have friends. Part of what I often kind of talk about as a benefit of community as it relates to the online space is that if you're training somebody in their home, you have access to their community in a way that you don't in the brick and mortar setting. Meaning, like, if I'm your client, you will very certainly see one of my kids running around in the background. Well, that's part of my community. That's my most important community, because it's the people I live with, it's people I love. It's being able to bring their family and friends who just may happen to walk around in the background and you can have some type of relationship with is a big part of community, because now you can say, over the course of time, if you've built a relationship and, the client's significant other and you see them in the background, you can hear them in the background, you can call out like, hey, he's doing X, or this is her habit, make sure they stick on it. It becomes now more of a family affair, and you can bring their family into the equation, even so far as like have their kids work out with them. There's a lot of opportunity that you can use to foster community in the online space. And then just because you train people online, especially if your clients are in the same geographic area as you are, doesn't mean you can't have in-person meetups. Some of the value of online is purely convenience, as you called out. Like, they just don't want to go to a gym. They don't want to drive. They don't want to do that. They still live in the neighborhood. They like the convenience of being at home. Yeah. Well, once a month you have meetups at a park where you get together. Like, there's a lot. Like, these are just a couple different ideas, but it's to acknowledge, like, and it's why for FORME, why we have focused on this. Community in person, that human connection is vitally important to the fitness industry. And so it's why we've gone heavily down this path versus, say, some others in our space that focus more on just the hardware in and of itself. We know that hardware is great. I love our hardware. I love our software. I love all the technology we developed. But we know that the human connection, the coaching, that's a core piece of making it work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm drawing a blank on which one of my friends in the online space talked about with online. Another benefit of it is that somebody might feel more comfortable sharing stuff about themselves because it's online.
Yeah.
That they're not being looked at, they're not being judged, and that might be where they're at. I think that's one of the pieces as working in this industry is you realize that it's more than just, they just can't go to the gym. There's so many more layers to it. And so with the online factor, that gives them that comfort that they feel, okay, I can share this about myself. I can share about my journey online. I feel like I'm in a much safer space for myself where I'm at right now. I think that's one of the big pieces that I always think about with it.
100%. Yeah. I mean, and that's I love that call out because it's also part of what we talk about in our end, from even not only from the information they'll feel comfortable sharing, because you're not sitting in a crowded space and having a conversation around things that they may find to be sensitive information.
Yeah.
But additionally, how many times have you trained somebody in either they're new to working out, they're new to the gym space? I think as trainers, sometimes we take for granted how comfortable I can walk into any fitness facility, strength conditioning facility, gym, what have you, and feel comfortable. I can picture in my head the schematic of every gym I've worked in, because that was my home. And so I think we forget that we have a different level of comfort in the gym space than our average client does. Yep. And so being in home, it gives them an opportunity to have that level of comfort, to try exercises they may not want to try in front of somebody else, to try something and fail and not worry about others seeing them fail. I always, in our education for our team of trainers, I use myself as the butt of the joke, but like I call out, like, I'm not a great dancer. Nobody wants to see me dance, but from a benefit, a physical and mental benefit, there's a lot of benefit that comes from moving rhythmically, having fun, enjoying yourself. Yep. But I know if I go to a gym, I'm never going to take like a group fitness Zumba class, because I don't want anybody seeing me doing it. I'm too self-conscious. At home, if I got my online content, the only person that's going to make fun of me is my wife, and she already does that anyway, so I'm good. Yeah. There's a lot of additional benefit to that added comfort of they can try new things, explore new things, get them doing different things they just may not do otherwise. 100% with all that. That's the benefit of online, that I feel it's lower down in terms of what's talked about, but it's really one of the ones that can really help open up that field, as we talked about already, with the percentage that does not go to the gym, that does, potentially want to exercise, doesn't know where to start. This is that avenue for them with it. And I have one more question before we get to the podcast takeaways. And, keeping with online and also with one-on-one training is the business end of it. What I usually talk about is that, you're opening yourself up to a bigger audience. You're able to, sell yourself more than just in that neighborhood of the gym that you're in or the area that you're selling to. How do you talk to the instructors that are listening to this, that are thinking, this might be something for me? Is it based on, in terms of like the marketing, they have to market themselves, or is the company marketing it for them? How is that all set up? So on our end, for us, it's both and. It's basically we have FORME as a company. We're bringing members on. We're having people join, and then we're pairing them with our trainers to start training. And then additionally, our trainers are able to bring their clients on and prospect, and we give them the tools to do that as well through us, prospect for clients to bring on from their end. So very similar to what would happen in a brick and mortar setting. We want, our ideal would be to give the hand over fist, clients to all of our trainers, but we want to give them the opportunity to bring people on that they interact with and build their business in that capacity as well. So we try to provide support on both sides of the equation.
Nice. Okay. Awesome. Well, let's get to the podcast takeaways. This episode I'll say it went in a different direction than I thought, but it just flowed out. And that's what I think that is the beauty of talking about online training, something that both of us are passionate about, and easily talked about it for 40 minutes and still probably just at the tip of the iceberg there in terms of talking about the benefits for both ends of it, clients, instructors, and even more what's to come in this space. So really great conversation there. Matt, podcast takeaways here. I switched it up a little bit in terms of probably when the last time you answered this question, but what are 3 myths about online training?
So I think one, and I call this out as a myth, not to be a negative on what I'm calling out, but to create the distinction. It's that online myth number one that I think is out there is like online training is all either purely group fitness or group training, and it's not individualized. And I gave that preface to that statement because it's not to say that that's bad. It's just that that's not the only thing that's out there. There's a lot of, and it's what we focus on, is that one-on-one connection and that one-on-one training. And it's absolutely individualized, just as much as any live one-on-one training session in a gym would be. It's customized to that individual. And so I think it's pulling back that idea that all of it is kind of hyper like group fitness or hyper focus on just the one to many. And it is very much a one-to-one customizable experience.
Oh yeah.
So that's one. I think the other piece that I would call out is that that you're not able to create a meaningful connection online. I think there's this idea that because it is, and it's part of like the social narrative around like the interaction with social media and like the being buried in a device, which is, I agree with a lot of that. But I think because you are going back to that first myth, like creating that one-on-one experience and creating that connection, you're creating the connection, a very strong connection with that individual. You know, you think about everybody that you probably people you grew up with or your family, and now you live somewhere else. You connect with them more often than not via some digital means, and you still have a strong connection with that person. So I think you're able to create a really good connection with the online experience. And then the last piece is that just in general, I think there's this perception that online training isn't as effective as in person. And the reality is honestly, I think if it's not as effective, I think it's more effective for one key element. So the first thing I'll call out is that you still have to approach it. This is where I think there's the bad rap has come from people just trying to jump in and not prepping and planning. And so that's why I talked a lot about the experience, and like I barely even spoke much about like the programming side of it. Although that's table stakes. Like you need to have your programming down. You have that set. Just because they're online doesn't mean you get to just show up and throw whatever out there and train them. You're on it with your programming. You're taking that next step forward and creating the experience on your side as well as the client side. And I think if you do that, it can be more effective because part of what you're doing, and this was almost like a thread to some of our conversation, is you're building more autonomy for that individual. Part of my goal as being the coach, as being the fitness professional, is to set my client up with the skill set and ability to be able to take ownership of their fitness world. I shouldn't be the source of solution for them. They should be able to develop it over time and be able to take ownership, because that means they're going to do more on their own. They're going to feel comfortable doing more on their own. It's going to be stickier for them in the long haul. Like I'm not going to train them for the next 20 years. Maybe I will, but I'm not always going to be there. And the more autonomy and ownership they have over it, the better. And so that online space, if I approach it in the right way, it may have a longer learning curve, but the end result is they end up doing it more on their own. They end up taking more ownership because they have to, and they end up seeing that they can apply it more across their life. And so to me, I think if it's not as effective, it can be more effective than the in-person experience, because now they're in their space. They can set up their environment. They can take that ownership. They can set themselves up to be successful with and without you, which is ultimately what every fitness professional should be trying to do. You should be trying to set your clients up to be successful without you.
I love it. The one I'm going to touch on is that first one, because it kind of expands on it. And one of the guests that I've had on the KIPS podcast, we talked about working with the active aging population online. And I think that also expands it. I think some people might think that, it's a very specific audience that can only work online. This is somebody that works specifically in active aging online. And she talked about all the benefits and all the things that even we talked about in this episode already in terms of going to the gym. The active aging population, that might be even tenfold with transportation, waiting for a community bus, all these different things. And yet that is one audience that you think they can't do it, but she was talking about all the benefits for them and why it should be a part of their experience with doing exercise. So a great piece right there. Matt, before we sign off, can you share social media links, website, all that kind of stuff for yourself and with FORME?
Absolutely. So for me, social media wise, I'm not terribly creative with my naming. So it's just for both Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, what have you. It's all the same. It's Matthew.Berenc at Matthew.Berenc on any of those platforms. So if you type in Matthew Berenc, you're going to find me. The website for my company for FORME is FORME Life. And that's, again, FORME with an E. So FORME life.com. That'll give you a visual to like all the things we're doing, all our hardware, what our training looks like. And yeah, I mean, and heck, if you want my email, it's just Matthew.Berenc, again, simple, Matthew.Berenc@gmail. Like questions, shoot them over. I'm happy to answer them. Send a message via, Instagram, what have you. I love getting, messages, questions, anything I can do to help. So I'm looking forward to meeting anybody that wants to reach out.
Great stuff in this episode. Thank you again for coming on, talking about all this stuff. And I really think that this episode, to start off 2023, it's great for anybody out there looking for ways to expand their business, stay in the fitness industry, grow in the fitness, all those different pieces. Yeah. All the reason why this podcast goes is that we want to bring guests on like yourself that share these things, passionate about it, and hopefully open up their eyes to something they maybe never even thought of. So thank you again, Matt.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. This is a great conversation.